There.
Good evening, everybody. Sarah, I think we can go ahead and get started, and we'll wait for a few others to be logging on as we go through the introductions. We are recording, everyone. Thank you.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Today is Wednesday, December 4th, 2024, and I want to thank you all for joining our virtual town hall meeting this evening. My name is Dr. Sarah Gongora, and I'm the Probation Oversight Commission's Project Director for Programs and Services. One of my core duties here at the POC is coordinating the annual facility inspections. So this evening, I'll be sharing the findings of the 2024 annual facility inspections of Los Padrinos Juvenile Hall and Barry J. Nidorf Secure Youth Treatment Facility, two of the facilities in our county where youth are detained, which are run by the LA County Probation Department. After I give the brief presentation to share the findings of these annual inspections, we can get to the main point of our town hall, which is for our panel to hear from all of you that have joined us. We'll have significant time at the end of the presentation for public comments and questions. So tonight I'm joined by POC Commissioners Diane Terry, Eduardo Mundo, and our former Commissioner Sean Garcia-Lays, all of whom participated in one or both of these inspections and were integral in drafting the notes and leading to the final inspection reports. We also plan on having IC Superintendent Eric Rayleigh here, who oversees Barry J. Nidorf, SYTF, and I believe Sean Arrington, who's the superintendent of Los Padrinos, is planning to join us. And there'll be panelists also to help answer any questions that are raised during comments. Our POC Executive Director, Wendy Julian, will briefly share the plan for tonight and some ground rules for participation. And then I'll proceed with the presentation and conclude with comments and questions from commissioners and the public. Wendy, will you please explain how people can participate in tonight's town hall meeting?
I will, absolutely. And you all can probably see that Commissioner Kakani has just joined us. She will not be on camera tonight, but here wanting to listen to all of your comments and questions as well. Our virtual town hall is being broadcast live today to our YouTube page. At least I think that's true. Is that true, Janae? We're certainly recording it and you can watch it on YouTube later. But I think it's being broadcast live as well. But there will be no engagement on YouTube. We also don't do engagement via the chat on WebEx. So you're welcome to follow our social media accounts on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Threads at LA County POC for more information about our meetings, to watch recordings after the meetings. And we encourage you to invite others to attend and follow. Tonight's town hall is a public meeting. Everyone can join. People can speak and give comments, but it is not a public meeting governed by the Brown Act. That's because we do not have a quorum of the probation oversight commissioners and they are not here in their official roles, and we will not be taking any action today. We encourage your participation. As Sarah said, that's why we're here. We will leave plenty of time for comments. If you don't want to comment today out loud, but you would like to send us an email, you can do so and we will share it if you want us to, or we'll only share it with the commissioners if you want us to, or we won't share it at all if you just want me and Janae to read it. It's info@poc.lacounty.gov, and Janae will put that in our chat. After we hear from Dr. Gongora, we will open the floor to commissioners and the public for comments and questions. Depending on how many people raise their hand and want to comment, we may put a time limit on how long, but as those of you who have attended our town halls in the past know, I would much rather there not be a time limit and rather this be a conversation where you all can share your thoughts and opinions and ask questions of the panelists and ask questions of probation. I'm extremely thankful to Mr. Raley for being available here. It's something we have wished would happen in the past. And here is Mr. Raley making my wishes come true. So thank you, Director Raley, for joining us. And we hope you may be able to address some of the questions that the public has, in particular about Mary J. Nidorf. And we also, I'm happy to provide translation if you want to give your comment in Spanish. I'll explain that in a second. In order to do so, use the little raise your hand function. If you can't figure that out, send a message in the chat and Janae and Ismail will help you get your name on the list. And again, you can send the comment in writing at info@poc.lacounty.gov. And we can answer those questions immediately. Janae will be checking that in the background if you want to ask those questions via email. Buenas tardes, bienvenidos. Ya hemos empezado la conferencia por WebEx y también estamos grabando y puede ver el video después en YouTube. Si le gusta hacer un comentario, tiene que hacer clic en la imagen de la mano que está en la parte baja de la pantalla y alguien le llamará por su nombre. Si están escuchando la conferencia por teléfono y quiere hacer una pregunta, por favor presione estrella 3 y alguien le ayudará cuando sea su turno. I just realized I didn't say that in English. If you're calling in and you want to make a comment, you use the *3 button and that will put you in line in the queue and we'll call you by your phone number. Si está viendo la conferencia en vivo por YouTube y ha escrito un comentario, no le vamos a contestar en YouTube. Por fin, si su pregunta es para una panelista específica, nomás tiene que indicar eso al comienzo de su pregunta. We ask you to abide by the following communication guidelines. We'd love for you to introduce yourself, share your thoughts and be respectful of the time so as many people can speak as possible. Remain respectful of each other and honor equity and participation, practice grace and openness, and speak your own truth. And with that, I would like to say a particular thanks to my colleague, Dr. Sarah Gongora. Sarah has taken over the role of project director. This is now her second full year of completing the inspections process. It is a tremendous effort that could not be done without the commissioners. The commissioners are the leaders in doing this. They make it happen. They do the inspections. But Sarah's leadership is firm, kind, and gentle, and extremely informed. And I could not do this job without her, and I'm very thankful and happy to have her take the lead in making the presentation today. So thank you, Sarah, and take it away.
Thanks, Wendy. Trying to get myself together after blushing from that introduction. I appreciate it. So if we can put up the slides, Ismail. And as I get it started, I also want to give my acknowledgements. So as Wendy said, these inspections are a huge undertaking. And I just want to take this moment to thank all willing to share their thoughts and experiences and feelings with us. Every probation employee that's willing to talk to us, Los Angeles County Office of Education staff, LACO, Department of Mental Health staff, Department of Health Services, Juvenile Court Health Services staff, all of the credible messengers in the facility, and program providers. Without the input of all of these people, we really couldn't put together a comprehensive look of what it's actually like inside of these facilities. So thank you all. Let's jump in and go to the next slide. So for folks joining us to learn about inspections for the first time, it's just a little bit of background info. Probation Oversight Commission is tasked with inspecting every probation run detention facility in LA County. We do that on a calendar year basis. So we set those up with the leadership at each facility in advance of the day. And then commissioners and POC staff spend a full day observing the facility environment, like including the interactions people there have. We interview as many people as possible during these inspections, and we take our notes with our observations and the outcomes of the interviews to compile a report. We submit that report to probation for feedback, specifically like if anything we've written is factually incorrect or they think we've got it wrong, we give time to hear that feedback. We also include in the reports links to various other relevant documents that I think really help to fill in the context or some of the history for folks that may be reading these inspection reports for the first time or just really coming into learning about the goings on in the county with probation. So many of those links include previous POC reports, board motions, handbooks. We publish all of that so that the public can see what it's like inside of the facilities. Okay, let's go into the next slide and get into the results. Okay, so the POC did the annual inspection of Los Padrinos Juvenile Hall on June 3rd, 2024. The findings included what you see on the screen. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the details of each of these findings. So to start, overpopulation, violence, and volatility, in particular in some units. So there are a number of units at Los Padrinos on that day that were very close to or at capacity. And both commissioners and POC staff observed youth really kind of cramped into some of those day rooms. And we heard complaints about them from young people. We had in interviews with youth and staff throughout the facility uncovered issues related to racial tensions, both between youth and between youth and staff. We heard concerns repeatedly about violence in the facility. So both violence that had occurred, as well as the expectation that violence would occur at the facility, like it was a given. Um, we also heard concerns about the violence of regular exposure to OC spray that emerged specifically from the units that were highly populated and have the smaller day rooms. Youth from various units that we visited were observed with like very obvious signs of injuries, including multiple youth that we saw in casts for broken and fractured hands and arms. We saw some youth with swollen, bruised eyes. We saw other youth with various bruising throughout the day. And it's remarkable, not only because it's a sign of violence, but also because in the previous year's inspection, uh, we did not see as many signs of injury. For girls' needs unmet, girls detained at Los Padrinos were understood to be facing really serious mental health concerns, were known to have traumatic histories, were known to have involvement in the child welfare system, or to be a victim of child sex trafficking or child sexual um, CSEC, commercial sexual exploitation of children, excuse me. And behaviors that commissioners and staff observed on the units ranged from some youth that were sad or isolating to angry or aggressive. And that raised serious concerns for commissioners and staff about the girls' needs being unmet. And when we talk about those needs, it's the needs for intensive care and for healing opportunities. Those sorts of shows of sadness or aggression are seen as mental health symptoms. Um, there was also an observation that there were pregnant, nursing, and parenting girls that were detained on the day of the inspection. That, of course, raised a lot of concern about cycles of intergenerational harm through detention. Um, this is the big positive one, the improvements in professional relation or partnerships. Uh, there was a remarked increase in communication and regular meetings between probation and the Department of Mental Health um, that had taken place since the 2023 inspection. I will say that in the previous 2023 inspection, it seemed like communication between probation and the co-located partners had really deteriorated. And there was a bounce back from that. There were positive things put in motion, like there were regular meetings between directors over certain units and the DMH supervisors of those units. And so there were ongoing discussions about um, helping particular youth or how like being able to stabilize a unit after a certain violent event. There was also installation of specialized substance abuse provider through the Department of Public Health, SAPC, Substance Abuse Prevention and Control. And that was a very notable and positive expansion at the facility. Um, while commissioners were attempting to observe programming, it was found that the programming was insufficient and schedules remained inaccurate. Um, commissioners observed that the programming that was meant to be led by the community-based organizations and credible messengers were mostly occurring as planned, but probation-led programs were neither occurring nor were they known to the officers on the unit or youth. It was also observed like one unit had no programming scheduled for the day, and the calendar that we were given to observe and visit units throughout the day, we noticed that one unit had no programming, and various other units were marked as also having no programming on various other days of the week. It was also observed there were too many substitutes in place of long-term stable relationships. So, um, in the absence of having regularly assigned probation officers and teachers, uh, it was observed like the onus really fell on youth to repeatedly adjust to all of the people passing through these spaces where they're living and trying to learn, and really depending on people on a day-to-day basis that they may never see again. And it really adds to the institutionalized experience of Los Padrinos. Um, there were many deployed probation officers that we spoke with who, I mean, they seemed to really be trying to do the best they could do, um, but they were faced with this daily challenge of like trying to build rapport with young people they didn't know and possibly were not going to see again, trying to make relationships with other officers to create some semblance of teamwork or safety on those units. And all of that proved very difficult. It was a challenge. Um, staff and youth alike reported that this contributed to the occurrence of violence in the facility. And it was also significant that LACO's dependence on substitute teachers in place of regularly assigned teachers created similar instability within the classrooms. Uh, it was also clear that the approach to supervision and facility planning was not coordinated. It was rather disorganized and inconsistent. So, on the day that we did the inspection, there appeared that there was more facility staffing than in the previous year, and maybe even 6 months previously. Just by eyeballing it, there seemed to be officers on the unit, but officers continuously reported that there were issues with the way that leadership utilized them or prepared their assignments or even the way that they were deployed, right? So some people were deployed repeatedly to different units and never got to really build relationships in order to provide stability for young people. Um, there was no known plan or progress to install a behavioral model, despite that being stated by probation's executive leadership as a goal. And there was, um, at the time, no steps being taken to divide the facility into smaller communities, which had also been shared as a plan by probation's executive leadership. So, unfortunately, these findings were mostly very similar to the findings of the 2023 inspection that we did of Los Padrinos, which occurred in October 2023, with the exception of the improved partnerships. Okay, let's go on to the next slide, the inspection of Barry J. Nidorf Secure Youth Treatment Facility. Um, so this is going to be a little bit of a flip from what you just heard about Los Padrinos. Um, you definitely saw that throughout the inspection at Barry J, discussions with directors at the facilities and probation officers providing supervision really exemplified an increased understanding of youth development. We spoke with probation officers who were able to name effects of trauma and or incarceration. We spoke with people who specifically understood that conditions like being at Los Padrinos long term, or having lived in poverty, or having experienced abuse, or having mental health concerns posed an effect on the current behaviors that they observed in young people. It was really clear that officers and leadership at that facility were tying these two together and responding. Um, so it was clearly affecting the interactions that were being had there and was being considered in the services offered to youth. And that included plans to start individualizing programming choices for youth, and overall seemed to be having a very positive effect at the facility. Um, there were also large improvements in what we observed in the programs and services. And I obviously I oversee programs and services with the POC, and I just can't say enough good here. Uh, the schedule was accurate. There were diversified substance abuse programming offerings, so multiple options of programs where young people could possibly address substance use concerns, right? Because nothing is a one size fits all. And for something as critical as substance abuse prevention, harm prevention, they're really taking a diversified approach, which is great. And we also saw that there was some targeting of age appropriate services, which included vocational training, which youth have been requesting for years. So I really want to give a lot of kudos there in the work that's being done. We did have questions about the developmental stage system in its adoption and outcomes. And so the DSS is a requirement of the Department of Justice Settlement Agreement, and it is rolling out at Barry J. Nidorf, and it's like a point system that incentivizes youth to participate in programming and also just like pro-social behaviors, like get through your day, um, not fighting, run your program, act appropriately, and you will earn privileges and the right to, go to the cantina or the canteen, and young people are incentivized through that. But it was unclear how executive leadership plans to utilize DSS. Um, if it will be used to unify practices across the whole county. And questions also remain regarding what data will be gathered to determine how effective the approach is. Um, it was also noticed in this inspection that there was increased and improved communication with most co-located partners. So it was really obvious that more positive rapport was established from the previous year between probation and juvenile court health services. The Department of Youth Development's contracted credible messengers, and also the contractors through Department of Public Health substance abuse prevention and control. So, like DPH SAPSI, between their contracted substance abuse counseling provider, there seemed to be a lot more teamwork moments happening. There were a lot of people referenced these bi-monthly meetings that happened where there was consultation and discussion of issues, so that everybody could work better together. Um, this whole exception was some of the relationships with the Department of Mental Health seemed like those had worsened somehow over the last 2 years, but overall, the communication with co-located partners had increased and improved. So overall, the 2024 inspection of Barry J. Nidorf, SYTF, built upon the positive progress that was also observed in the 2023 inspection of the facility. The progress seen in these POC inspections these last 2 years at this facility is really commendable from where it was. Let's go to the next slide. So, in the spirit of keeping that brief, um, I want to now open the floor to the commissioners joining us and our ex-commissioner also to take just a couple of minutes to share any of your experiences or reflections from these inspections.
I can start. Hi, everyone. I wanted to start with talking about Barry J, and just what I would share is that what really came across, I think, was just the pride that the staff there had. I think that they were very honest in terms of recognizing maybe where they had come from and what were some of the challenges they were dealing with even the year previously. And they were very much focused on how do we kind of make some incremental changes, beginning with staff, and then how might that translate into the overall facility. And so I just think it was very impressive to hear how invested they were. And I know, yeah, that was kind of something that framed the visit for me. I want to echo the sense of really robust programming that we saw. And I think that what we saw kind of shows the power of having leadership that really seemed to like welcome and value and respect programming and CBO relationships. And overall, it did just feel like there was just buy-in across all levels of the facility, from the CBOs to leadership to the principal, in terms of what the vision of the facility is. And so I think it just felt like seeds were planted, even if obviously every single change or every single step that needs to get implemented maybe isn't there yet, but you could see that those seeds were planted. And one staff person in particular even echoed that and said, I've received the training, the DSS training, and it takes time for staff to buy into it. It takes time for youth to adopt it. But he was even able to give some examples of how he saw youth themselves beginning to apply some of what they were hoping to see behaviorally. And so those were some of the reflections that I had there. And we met some very remarkable youth, some youth who were just kind of doing really amazing things, had made some important transformations, but also it seemed that there was investment in those young people, and they were supported by leadership in some of the changes that they were making. So that was nice to see. I would say at Los Padrinos, that was very different. It was a very different climate. And I think the main thing there is there did not seem to be that unified vision. I think that I spoke with some staff who were so dedicated, who were really doing very creative programming, noticing that there were gaps. Staff with a lot of experience who were kind of just sharing their own personal strategies for de-escalating situations, for how they work with young people. Or you would see, for example, in individual units, how it made a difference, for example, having a DMH person right on site. But I can't say that that was present in every unit. Or even small things like having artwork in a unit compared to others that didn't. So everything seemed to vary and just kind of depended on what the staff in that particular unit kind of, how they were making the most of it. But I think it was very disheartening to see youth with black eyes, to see a day room that was so crowded that, for those of us who have been in adult facilities, that did remind you of that. And I think that that's failing our youth. I think seeing youth so disengaged from school, not even an attempt often to kind of engage them more so in the classroom, was upsetting. And yeah, so I think I'll stop there and I'll pass it to Commissioner Mundo.
Thank you, Commissioner Terry. You left very little for me to say, but as somebody who has spent almost 15 years in institutions, I marveled at the fact that staff were there and that they were trying their best that they can to make good of a really bad situation. watching just the environment and getting a feel for how explosive it felt, that something can just happen at any minute, and there just are not enough staff that are present in the units. Even the ones that have fewer kids, a lot of them had staff that were on one-on-ones and really not part of the numbers. And having to do all that they have to do and not have sufficient staff is just, I imagine it's unbearable for the staff, unbearable for the kids. I also would like to piggyback on the violence. I visit courts. Once a week, I'm at a courtroom, and no less than 3 attorneys shared photos of their kids with bruises and with contusions on their heads, and being told that these kids were hurt, and yet families were not notified immediately. On one situation, a kid was hospitalized, and the parents did not know until the kid informed them. And so the violence that's just present in our halls is just in our hall. It's just disappointing. With that, I will pass it on to our ex-colleague, Mr. Lays.
Thank you. I always go into these inspections, or did go into these inspections, with the question being, is our communities safer for having sent youth to these facilities, often just for a couple weeks, and then bringing them home? And I feel about Los Padrinos pretty strongly that the answer is no. That they're not only just doing an injustice to the young people's potential for rehabilitation and promise for the future, they're making our communities less safe by sending young people into an area and locking them in rooms where they have to fight, where they have to click up, where they have to, at least in their minds, but with some truth to it, in order to survive, they have to become less human, more violent people. And then after we do that to them, we ask them to go home, go back to high school, go back to whatever situations they were from, having just loaded more trauma onto them, which makes them less able to respond appropriately to the challenges of life on the outside. So that's, I mean, really for me, the bottom line about Los Padrinos. It's failing at its mission. In fact, it's counterproductive. My other thought that I'd like to share is sort of why. Certainly, the staffing has been well documented and discussed as a reason, but it's been long enough that Los Padrinos seems to have had a set of expectations and a culture that's kind of hardened. Everybody expects tomorrow to be like yesterday, and yesterday was bad, and tomorrow is going to be bad. Everybody has expectations that there's going to be fights breaking out, that there's going to be, pepper spray used. All of the comments, I agree. It's amazing that staff show up and that they try hard. But when I would talk to them, a lot of what I would hear is that sense of like, I'm doing the best I can, and I will continue to show up and do the best I can, which is different from what we're doing here is making the world a better place. Because the difference is a sense of whether or not, as a whole, as an institution, as a team, as a collective, you're succeeding or not. And what I saw was a lot of staff who were dedicated and hardworking and feeling like they're not, as a team, as a unit, as a facility, succeeding. Millie, I see your hands up.
Thank you for all of that, and I apologize that I'm not on camera. There are two things about Barry J that stood out to me that I just felt important to name. One was the college experience that we were able to bear witness to. We got to catch the tail end of a math class where I believe there were 3 or 4 young folks who were sitting in a bright, I don't know, like positive, non-suffocating feeling space where they were interacting with their instructor, despite the fact that it was on Zoom. That instructor knew their names, had a rapport with them. They had the support, I believe, of a probation employee. And it really was, it was great to bear witness to. And it was wonderful to see that like young people were having opportunities to grow and potentially kind of recover from the trauma that they were subjected to by way of the system, let alone what they walked into the system with. And as I was carrying that, I walked into one of the high school classes and I was talking to a young person about, the programs, how they're doing, are their needs met? Like, are they doing all right? And he's like, Miss, it's still jail. And I just think it's important to remember that we have young people, and this was a younger class again, because it was high school. And I believe this young person may have been 16. So on the younger end of the SYTF population. But that at 16, you're already conditioned to think that this is jail. I think it's just important for all of us to remember like what this feels like for a young person and what they are carrying with them the minute they walk into, whether it was Central, whether it was Barry J as a hall or LP. And that takes me back to LP. And I want to, plus one everything that has been shared, but it's wild to me what we are placing in the laps of young people and expecting them to survive, to manage, to regulate themselves through, when even the adults are having a very hard time doing that. Hear staff literally like counting down the days to which they can go back to their field assignments and kind of, the end of their deployment. There's no way, sure, they showed up to work today, they're getting their paycheck, but there is no way that the person who is counting their 60 days down is in any meaningful way able to show up for those young people, cultivate relationships, understand their needs, and meet those needs. Clearly, everyone is barely surviving, and I don't think that is doing anyone any favors. And to Mr. Garcia-Lay's point, like we're not doing anyone any favors. We are not making communities safer. And it's so tragic to me that all of that falls in the lap of young people whose prefrontal cortexes are not fully developed, who may have made the most horrendous mistakes, but really have no opportunity to recover from them. It's wildly unfair and unjust that we are continuing to, and even at the time in June, we're placing young people in these facilities that to present cannot meet the most minimum standards required by the law. It's outrageous, it's unfair, it's tragic, and deeply upsetting to bear witness to. So that's it. Thank you.
Commissioners, I appreciate you all being here and making comments and sharing your insights with the public. And now I'm going to pass it back to our Executive Director, Wendy Julian.
Thanks. I'm just going to say a couple of things about things I experienced during the inspections. I'm so glad Millie said something about the college class. I left that room beaming, and Director Raley was still pretty new at the time. And he said something to us like, isn't that how it's supposed to be? And we were like, yeah, it is how it's supposed to be, not how it has been. It was incredible. The other thing that I saw at Barry J was boys. Some of them are young men, but they're very young men playing in the pool, which was wonderful. And even more impressive than that, we were walking around with 4 of the directors and Director Raley that day, and the kids know the directors' names and the directors know the kids' names. And that is not typical in the past at these facilities. And it may sound like a small thing, but I think it's actually a tremendous thing that goes to that first finding that Sarah described around the trauma-centered experience. At Los Padrinos, I'll share 2 quick things that I witnessed, both regarding girls. Actually, one of them I think directly relates to one of the findings around the substitutes, and it was in watching the girls' classroom and a substitute teacher. There were actually two substitutes, both the main teacher and the secondary teacher were substitutes. I watched a girl who was not really complying, but not really misbehaving. She was sitting on the counter. And rather than try to redirect her or ask her how she was doing or try to say anything to her, the teacher sent her out of the classroom. And I walked out of the classroom with I think with Diane, if I recall correctly. And we watched a member of probation's crisis intervention team, a fairly young DSO at Los Padrinos, de-escalate the situation with this girl by kindly and calmly asking her what was going on and finding out that she had court that afternoon and she was extremely stressed. And the DSO reassured her, gave her some very good suggestions about things she could do to calm down and go in the room, made sure she would get what she needed by court. And the girl was able to return to class and participate in class thanks to that happening. We actually are going to be talking about that at our next POC meeting, the crisis intervention teams, but it was both extremely impressive and really concerning about having so many adults that these kids interact with every day that they don't know. And the second one is one that's hard to say without choking up, which is my experience so often at these facilities, which is in our inspection. And it was about a girl that we saw who had fashioned a bow for her hair. It was made out of like pink tissue paper. It was really cute. And one of the commissioners asked her about it. And she informed them that she had an interview that afternoon with a placement. She had been waiting for placement for a long time. And was hoping that by looking cute, she could find a placement that would accept her in the community. The level of how unacceptable that is to me is extraordinary. And it is just a reminder about what Commissioner Kakani just said. These are children and they are young people who have experienced life experiences that I certainly can't imagine. And then put into this facility where it's very difficult to get through every day and still trying to literally put on their best face to get out. And in the case of many of these girls and the youth in general, I mean, we've been looking at some data that shows that as many as half of the kids in the facility either have or had an open DCFS case when they came in. These are kids who are victims of abuse and neglect themselves. And they need our help and they need alternatives and they need a place other than Los Padrinos to be. And I'm very much looking forward to the department's detention reduction plan getting us there and glad that our inspection can highlight that. And I know I said that was my last one, but I will say one more, which maybe Eduardo could have told or should have told because we were together when we learned this, that we talked to a young man who had been in the facility for 4 years that day. And that facility is not intended for young people to be there for 4 years. It's probably not even intended for them to be there for 4 weeks, but 4 years, certainly not. And so there are a lot of things the staff and the department is being asked to do that is beyond what's reasonable for any young person. And I hope that our inspections can uplift the troubles, but also the extraordinary strides that have been made, as you'll see at Barry J, but also as you heard both Commissioners Garcia-Leyes and Mundo say, what the staff who are trying their best at Los Padrinos are doing in a situation that is really challenging. So thank you for listening, and we really look forward to hearing what you all have to say.
You're facilitating comment.
Okay, good. Okay, sorry. I'm going to facilitate public comment. So if you would like to make public comment, please use actually, you know what, before we do that, Director Raley, is there anything that you would like to say in response to the comments? And then also, I'll ask people to start thinking about their own public comments and raise their hand so we can start the queue.
Thank you. The only thing that I'd like to add is that certainly none of this has to do with anything that I've done. It's all been the staff here, the Assistant Superintendent Bavarin, who was there when you did the tour, Director Newbold, Director Martinez, all of the staff here that have made the changes that you experienced. as you said, I came into the process much later in the situation, and it's clear that the staff have really made extraordinary strides. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I appreciate you saying that. And we would love to hear from you if you have questions for the commissioners about their experience, for Director Raley, for other leadership of the department that we can certainly share with them going forward. So if there's anyone who'd like to ask a question, please use the raise your hand function. I won't be calling on you, but we'd love to hear from you. We don't have any hands raised, Sarah. There we go, Helen Eigenberg. Hi, Helen. Welcome. We so appreciate you coming to all of our meetings. We're going to unmute you and you can begin.
Can't hear you all. You went. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. All right. Hi. Thank you for letting me speak for a moment. I have a question. I just also have I have to tell you, sitting here listening to this and what's happening at LP, it is just mind blowing, and I just don't understand it. And I don't understand how there's no one being held accountable here. And if this was a private institution, it would have been closed and people probably would have been arrested. And so, all it makes me feel like is, at the end of the day, this is the Board of Supervisors' responsibility, and they are clearly failing. So I just have to say that. I guess my question is, it's heartening to hear what's happening at Barry J. And it also says to me that we do have the ability to do things in the right direction to really support these children that are there. And why is that not happening at Los Padrinos? I just don't understand it. And, it's, I don't know. So I guess I'm just wondering, why is it not happening I mean, I know we talk about the staffing, but they just are not getting it together there. And yet look what they've done at Barry J. So I don't know if anyone can speak to that to help me understand, but it's really, hearing these are kids, what's happening to them there is just unacceptable on so many levels. So thank you for letting me speak. And
Thank you, Helen. Go ahead, Millie.
I just wanted to respond to that. I appreciate that. And I think I initially had that same kind of struggle and sense of confusion. And I think it's important to remember, right, that when a young person gets to SYTF, there's a date, there's a plan, there's whether it's 3 years, whether it's 7 years, you kind of know what you're facing. Whereas LP is where our young people are most vulnerable, right? You don't know if you're going to be there for 2 days, if you're going to be there for 7 days, if you're going to be there for 10 months, or if you're going to be there for 4 years, and you have no idea what comes after that, right? So there is a level of uncertainty that we're asking young people to contend with, just in terms of where is their life headed? And then you compound that with a level of uncertainty in terms of which adult is going to, in quotes, care for me today. And it is wildly unfortunate that we are not putting our most experienced, our most trained, our most, I don't know, qualified individuals and folks who are wanting to be with these young folks in that way at LP. Because I think that you can't have folks coming in, and you can't have adults coming in and out of LP, being held over, being deployed, whatever it is, right? Caring for young folks who are, again, at their most vulnerable spot. So I don't know if that's helpful, and I don't know that will be the ultimate answer, because young folks will always be dealing with a level of uncertainty and anxiety around that when they're at a juvenile hall, when they are pre-dispo, pre-sentencing, pre-adjudication. But it feels like it is the space and the facility and the group of young people who deserve the greatest level of consistency and care, I think. Not that all young folks aren't deserving of the utmost care, but I don't know if that's helpful.
Thank you, Chair Kakani. Commissioner Kakani, Chair Mundo, did you want to respond to that as well?
The only thing that I'm going to comment on, and maybe Mr. Riley can help with this, at Los Padrinos, you have approximately 150 to 200 kids coming in monthly and 150 to 200 kids leaving. You never get a stable environment there with the same kids, let alone the same staff. It's always been the case. The camps were always a more calm setting. There were always a better environment for the kids. And I don't know what the numbers are and what kind of rotation they have at Mary J, but Mr. Reddy might be able to enlighten us about that.
Yeah, the number is a slower process, certainly given the time. I think there's a number of factors that all play in and are intertwined that complicate the situation.
Thank you. Pastor Woody, you can go next. We're going to unmute you, and then you may have to unmute yourself.
Guys do. I just want to know, are there opportunities for the young people to have religious services? And then also, there was a time where I went to Los Padrinos and we were able to like get the kids a good Thanksgiving meal or Christmas meal. Are there still opportunities for that? Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I'll let Mr. Raley answer about Barry J. And then if you're able to about Los Padrinos, or else I think Sarah and I can tell you what we know about Los Padrinos.
The answer to both questions is yes. There were youth that had a Thanksgiving dinner here, for example, and there will be more for other holidays. And then, of course, religious services is always provided.
It's my understanding that at both facilities there are Catholic and Protestant religious services offered, as well as Bible studies during the week, and that if there are other religious services asked for, they can be accommodated. And there are chapels at both facilities where youth can go, although the chapel at Los Padrinos is generally used for visitation and other activities. But Sarah, is there anything you want to add about religious services? Okay. Let's go next to Sonia Burnt. Sonia, you may need to unmute
you hear
yourself.
me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, now you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. A couple of things. I agree with the earlier commenter about this is really a Board of Supervisors problem, and they don't seem to be accountable at all. And it's very difficult to just go get 1 minute when various issues arise before them. And I think there needs to be a lot more engagement with the supervisors to help understand and the importance of the community's feeling that this is really important to the community, that they fix this. Second of all, I thought I heard something like detention reduction. Did I hear something like that?
You did.
I didn't hear any explanation of that.
Yes, thank you. Was there anything else you wanted to ask? And then I'll be happy to answer that question.
No, that's fine. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you, Sonia. Yeah, so the department has created a detention reduction plan. They had actually spoken about it in a number of meetings with members of the Board of Supervisors and leaders of the Probation Oversight Commission, but then shared about it publicly at a Probation Oversight Commission meeting recently. It is a plan that addresses intake and policies around intake. I will actually let Chair Mundo talk about his opinions about it. Factually, I think the goal is very specifically to reduce the population by reducing the number of intakes every month, which as he said, if we're averaging between 150 and 200 intakes, could have a very significant impact on the total population. The last population figure that we received was on Monday, the 25th, at which time there were 245 youth at the facility, which is a significant decrease to where it has been over the past year. It was hovering around 300 for most of the past year. Eduardo, did you want to say anything else about the detention reduction plan?
The only thing I'm going to comment on is that one of the pillars of it was to place kids on house arrest prior to going to court. And it is my understanding that for 1 month, there had not been a single pro tap, a single kid placed on house arrest prior to court. And the information I'm seeing indicates that probation continues to be misguided in its recommendations. I didn't get a chance to address this at our meeting, but I'll address it now. A 707B case, which is a case that probation has to take, can be released at court and can be placed on house arrest. There's nothing that precludes us from recommending that. The information I'm gathering with my visits to court, talking to families, is that probation is probably about 100% recommending detention, and that should not be the case in the juvenile system. It should be a higher percentage of kids being released at court, or at least being detained at home. So I'm not sure if they're still really focused on that. I know they're focused on the front end, because I'm hearing that from district attorneys that I talk about too. Agencies out there are getting the feeling that they can't bring kids in, so they're just not trying. And so if that's part of the plan to dissuade officers from bringing kids in, well, then that's working on that end. And we'll see how that pans out, because then you have kids that might need services not being serviced. So, but I'm not sure with regards to the plan, whether or not it's still in play.
I can assure you on behalf of the Probation Oversight Commission that we are continuing to request the data about detention recommendations, about intake, so that we can report that back to the public and the board, both about probation successes and areas where they could continue to reduce the population further. So thank you for that question. Marie,
someone fill that?
Go ahead, sure.
So it's my opinion that the population reduction that is really going to allow Los Padrinos to get a hard reset is less than 100 kids. I'm thinking like 50. And the current plans are not going to get us anywhere near that, nowhere close to the level of reductions that would be needed to substantially change the interactions between people who work there. Which means the problem, detention recommendations, the problem needs to be taken out of the hands of the people who currently have it, right? And it's not just the probation staff that make the recommendations, it's the judicial court as well. Los Padrinos has been unsuitable since October, and yet the judges continue to send kids there in violation of the law. It's going to take a higher court or a federal court or some other outside judiciary to tell the juvenile court and the probation department and the district attorney that they just can't send kids to an unsuitable facility, that has to stop.
Okay. Maria Brass, did you put your hand down? You're welcome to speak if you like. Can you find Maria to unmute? Oh, it's Marie. Sorry, I renamed you. You're unmuted, Maria, if you'd like to speak.
Okay, hello. I have family and friends that actually work in the facility inside Los Padrinos, and I was told, it's a very stressful working environment. The staff are often, as you know, held over to work 3 out of 5 working days, 16 hours per day. There's only 24 hours in a day. And it seems as though where the staff are placed with caring for and meeting the needs of the youth, but yet the staff, they don't even have, there's 8 hours left with traffic and driving. How do they even get to care for themselves or commit to even their commitments with their families and their children when, in fact, there's not enough time? And so they're going to work. They don't have a place for breaks. They don't have a outlet. They don't even have a moment to sit and eat lunch without having to keep their eyes on the youth. So how do you guys expect the staff to really make a difference when in fact they're being held under scrutiny, you know, being forced to stay somewhere when really they're only required to work 8 hours per day?
Thank you for bringing that up, Marie. I'll just say that what Marie is saying about holdovers is when a staff is working their shift, and then because it's not like working at Target, you can't just go home if the person who is supposed to follow up after you doesn't arrive because they call out. So staff are often held over, meaning that they have to stay beyond the time that they would regularly be getting out, which could mean serving an additional 8 hours, or I think we've heard of an additional 16 hours is possible. We met a number of staff during the inspection who had preemptively come in early because that way they wouldn't be held over. So they had volunteered for an additional shift before their existing shift. And we've also heard stories, it wasn't part of what I heard at this inspection, but we've heard in past visits about staff who are very frustrated because, for example, they'll be working a shift on a Friday and Saturday is their child's birthday party, which is their day off. So they wouldn't have to call out, but they may get held over onto that Saturday. So there are things that really impact their daily lives that are extremely challenging. So I think that's what Chair Mundo was mentioning at the beginning about the staff that we talked to who are many of whom are extremely dedicated and very hardworking and care about the young people and are tired and frustrated and really concerned about their own safety. So commissioners, is there anything else you'd like to say about your experience talking to the staff, in particular at Los Padrinos? Thank you for bringing that up, Marie. I don't see any other hands. Anyone else who'd like to make a comment? Director Newble, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I just wanted to comment on a few things that were said. One, I want to make it very clear they do have holiday meals and other meals, and they eat very well over here at Berry J. We do special events. I don't know if any of you watched the videos that were sent to you, but we have had a number of special events. We brought the first food truck in here, and it went great. We had football games. No incidents have happened during the special events we've had all year. So we'll continue to raise the bar. But I do want to mention that there's always a comparison between Berry J and and LP. And it's an unfair comparison because LP has almost 3 times the amount of young men and women than Berry J does. Although we have the proven higher propensity of violence, just looking at the crimes that have been done and where they're placed at, LP is dealing with a bigger volume. We have the luxury over here to spend a lot more time with them, to get to know them. We see them from the bottom, and hopefully we hope to see them rise, and hopefully we can effectuate change. That's what we all work towards, gear to, and that's what we strive for. And LP, like Kakani said, they have those barriers because they are coming in and out a lot, and they don't get the time that we get. The bottom line is we get 18 months to almost 3 years of pouring into youth. That's what it looks like it's going to be. Even if we get a year, we get a solid year of the same youth, of working with them, talking to them, figuring them out. And that is different than what LP has. So when you compare the two, you have to take that in consideration. That's a big difference. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you very much, Krista. I appreciate your clarification about that. Let's go next to Ms. Coffey. You're unmuted.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So basically what I did want to point out, and I basically have the same sentiments as two other callers that called in about this being at the fault of the BOS. Back when we had Adolfo Gonzalez as our chief, he clearly notified the BOS of our need to hire, but they would not allow him to hire. And so with that, you come into the problem of staffing. And, you know, now it's at the point where staff are just, that remain, are overwhelmed, they're stressed, they're older, and don't want to put themselves in a position where they could possibly break a bone because they're older and not heal. So, you know, I did want to bring that a point up because the BOS is basically our boss. And if they don't support us, then how can this ever be solved? I just don't see it. And I don't see the support that we need from the BOS. But I do appreciate Commissioner Jackson. Wendy, I appreciate you because you both seem to look at both sides. It's not just one-sided. And then another thing that I want to say is that you have to take in account, which I don't hear a lot, there are victims. There are victims that can't speak right now to say that they're a victim because they're dead because of something a youth did to them. And we can't forget that. That's part of our mission, is to make the victims or the victims' next of kin whole. And being a mother myself, I teach responsibilities to my child. And we should be doing the same thing for the youth that are in our custody. It should not be Disneyland. So that's basically what I wanted to point out, those points, and I thank you for taking my call.
Thank you. And I saw Karina, you had your hand raised and then put it down, but if you still want to speak, we'd love to hear from you. If you want to raise your hand again, we can unmute you. Okay, you're unmuted, Karina.
Myself.
Karina, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to add, I guess, to what everybody else was saying in regards to you know, the staff being overworked. And I'm a parent and I see the huge difference in the two facilities. I used to visit one of my kids at Los Padrinos, and now I'm over at Silmore visiting him. And, you know, I started thinking, and it was unfair for me to point fingers at staff and say that they were, you know, some of them are disrespectful, but I get it. They're overworked, they're tired. So, you know, I had to kind of reflect on that because I was just pointing fingers at people and not really paying attention to the whole situation as a whole. But it seems like if they were to be, or if they would have some help, I feel like they wouldn't not be that stressed, and that, you know, they won't carry that attitude, or it would be better even if the kids had like just a consistent staff member. I know my son had said that in regards to staff members, are always changing them. Some come with attitudes, some are tired when they cannot go home. You know, sometimes they leave the kids in the rooms, and that's kind of like a domino effect. It's not good for everybody. But yeah, I mean, that falls on, like everybody's saying, it falls under, you know, whoever is leading them. So that counts, I think, a lot. That has a lot to do with it. Maybe if that would have changed from there, then maybe everything else will fall into place.
Karina, I'm so thankful that you joined to share that perspective from a parent. Thank you very much. And the comments that you're making are reflected by other parents who I've spoken with who've had the same experience of their young person being at Los Padrinos and then transferred, dispositioned either to Barry J or to one of the camps. That it's a pretty drastic difference for them as a parent as well as for their young person. I'd also like to welcome Sean Arrington, who's joined us, who's the director of Los Padrinos. Thank you. And he was working on important work at the facility. As you all have heard, there's lots going on there. So thank you for joining us, Director Arrington. Let's unmute Commissioner Canales.
Hi, yes, thank you so much. I'm calling in tonight as just listening in and listening to all the report backs on the inspections. I mean, all of you just communicated very articulately about everything that you've experienced and seen. And the story with the pink bow, I immediately was thinking, oh my gosh, you know, I just want to know what happened to this young girl and hopefully that she was able to be placed. But I just wanted to comment on uh, the differences, but it seems, you know, we already had some calls there, and I really want to commend Director Newell for lifting up some of those differences. Some of the things that I've even brought up in the commissioners meeting is, you know, the deployments, the overtime. And I remember one time I even referred to them, I think, as floor staff, and it's supposed to be line staff when you're talking about probation. But you know, how the staff are feeling and how the staff are being treated does reflect on the whole environment. And you know, and I think that that's something we need to also look at and take into consideration. But another thing, I just wanted to lift up the positive programming that we've seen progress with, although it's not in your inspection report, with Hoops for Justice at Los Padrinos. They're making great strides. Supervisor Hahn has been going herself with her team and attending some of these programmings. And you know, so I just wanted to point that out. And for the person that asked the question, you know, can you hold these events or take things in for like Thanksgiving and Christmas? You know, absolutely you can. I know it does take some paperwork, but I have seen at both facilities, at really every facility that I've went to, where they even appreciate this kind of stuff, just as long as you follow the protocol. And, you know, so I would, you know, for those that are calling in and wanting to talk about, you know, all the things that the facilities need and that the youth need, please do fill out that paperwork, see what you could take in for the youth, or that what you could even donate if you can't go in, what you could donate for them, especially with the holidays coming up. I urge those, you know, to get involved in that way too. Thank you.
Thanks,
That's
Commissioner
it.
Canales. I don't see any more hands. I will share that one of my big takeaways from Barry J, you know, there's been a lot of talk about a phrase called home-like environment, which has been used to describe the reconstruction of the facilities to make them look like home. Although I think I would agree with Commissioner Kakani and what we hear from the young people that it doesn't look like anybody's home. It doesn't look like home. But I did have an experience at Barry J that changed my mind about that somewhat, is that I went into Unit CD, which is what's being used as like the mini step down at Barry J. So for young people who are performing well in their programs, and they have dogs in their programs through the Pause for Life. It was the first time that I've gone into a facility other than Kilpatrick, which if you read our inspection, you'll read how different it is. But the first time that I'd gone into a unit and thought, oh, this does feel like a home-like environment. And it's the dog that made me think that, not because it looks like home, it looks like a unit at Barry J, but the boys were sneaking food off of their plates to feed to the dog. They were playing with the dog. They're training the dog. They're very serious. Sarah took some pictures of the dog park that they've built there. And there was an effect of clearly protecting this animal that they're raising and feeling very proud of where the dog was going to end up. And it was really a beautiful experience to watch the young people be able to show their empathy and love and care for the dog, and also build bonds with each other by raising the dog and sharing the responsibilities. So there were a lot of good benefits of that program. Pastor Woody, you're welcome to comment again. We'll unmute you.
you so much. I was just wondering, does the staff have to go through like a semi-annual mental health evaluation or annual evaluation themselves? Because as one of the callers said, they be under a lot of stress.
Thank you for that question. Director Torelli and Arrington, can you answer that question?
I'm not sure. So I think you're asking, are they required to do what exactly?
Like a mental health assessment? Or how are you
They're-
addressing mental health needs of the staff?
So that would be beyond, that would be for the larger department to answer. I wouldn't want to say for sure what processes that they have in place for that.
Director Arrington, is there anything you'd want to add to that? Oh, I don't actually know if we can hear you. You appear unmuted, but I don't hear any.
I think Ms. Newell may be able to speak about it as well. I think she's going to mention peer support and some
Sure.
other services the department
Okay,
has.
great. Can you unmute Krista, please, Janae? Go ahead, Krista.
Yeah, we have peer support and we also have a referral system that is based throughout the county that we can refer as staff if they're asking for help, or if we see some things and we might think they need help, we can do the referral and they'll reach out to them privately. So they do have access to mental health services, either on their own or we can refer them, but they have to volunteer to speak to them, but there is access to it. It's not mandatory, but it's present.
Thank you, Director Newell. And I know that that is something that Commissioner Jackson has asked about on multiple occasions, is the mental health supports for and other supports for staff. So that's certainly something that's on the mind of commissioners. So thank you for that question. That is, I think, all of our public comment for today, Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Wendy, for facilitating that. And it's time to wrap it up then. So I want to thank every single person who joined us, all of our commissioners, all of the public. Thank you so much for all of your comments and for listening. Our next commission meeting is on Thursday, December 12th at St. Anne's Events and Conference Center at 9 a.m. You can find registration details for that on the POC website at poc.lacounty.gov/meetings. Thanks everyone again for being here and have a great night.